Choose life. Choose Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and hope that someone somewhere cares. Choose the special relationship. Choose Theresa. Choose Donald. Choose the wall. Choose your facts. Choose alternatives. Choose America. Choose the potential US ambassador to the EU, Ted Malloch.
It's significant that President Trump has chosen Prime Minister May as his first foreign visitor to visit the White House. Choose America. Choose Britain. Choose friendship.
Choose looking back at referendums, wishing you'd done it all differently.
Thank you very much.
Choose Brexit. Choose the courts. Choose the people. Choose Trident. Or maybe don't. Choose the Spectator's Isabel Hardman.
With Corbyn's shambolic performance at Prime Minister's questions, running for the Hills must be looking pretty good for him right now.
You're a politics addict, so embrace it. Go all out. Choose Blue Nun. And if that doesn't work, choose comedian Bridget Christie for some much-needed light relief.
Choose Newsnight. Choose Question Time. Don't choose This Week.
Choose Bargain Basement Television. Choose a zero-hour chat show, a mind-numbing, skull-crushing programme that's only mildly better than reality TV. Choose Patillo. Choose Johnson. Choose BBC One. Choose an unknown dose of an unknown programme. Who needs reason when you have This Week? Evening all, welcome to This Week, the show which regularly misfires and heads off in the wrong direction, but which is on so late nobody can be bothered terminating us. Instead, there's a plan to twin us with the Trident missile system. Speaking of loose cannons, Prime Minister May's finger is now hovering over the trigger for Article 50. Who knows what direction that could go in? After weeks of insisting she didn't need a white paper to give her Brexit directions, on Wednesday she announced, yep, that's right, you got it, a white paper. The U-turn caught Jeremy Corbyn on the hop, his prepared attack for PMQs terminated on takeoff and reduced to a little heap of ashes on the Labour front bench. Now, I'm told that over in the colonies, the Donald is rather jealous of all the fun the Brits are having with missiles, takeoffs and terminations, and is getting itchy fingers. Now, even though they're only very little itchy fingers, let's hope he confines them to his Twitter account and not to the nuclear codes, or our own dear Prime Minister, whom he meets tomorrow. Speaking of malfunctioning hardware that should have been decommissioned years ago, I'm joined on the sofa tonight by two guests who've never been successfully tested or cleared for any kind of operation. I speak, of course, of Michael #ChooChoo Patillo and Alan #SadManOnTheLeft Johnson. Welcome to you both. Your moment of the week.
The one to which you have been alluding throughout your introduction, the misfiring of the missile. I have found it impossible to imagine circumstances in which a British Prime Minister would be permitted by the United States or would choose to fire the nuclear deterrent. But, you know, now that you don't know whether it's going to go to Moscow or Miami, it is even less probable that...
Which one would you prefer it to go to?
It's even less probable that a Prime Minister will fire it. If there were any rationality in the world, the huge amount of money that's going to be spent on this would be redirected towards weapons that we would actually use, and that would enable us to make a valuable contribution to the NATO alliance. At the moment, I think we make an insufficient contribution.
Well, thank you for preempting our discussion that was coming up in the roundup of the week, so that will give us more time for something else. Alan, your moment?
Well, I try not to preempt that, but I can't say that it's anything other than the publication today of the European Union brackets withdrawal from closed brackets Act 2017. So it had its first reading today. It was published.
Did you have time
today.
to read it all?
Well, that's why I say it was a moment of the week. I only took a moment to read it. I mean, I actually counted the word, leave out the long title, together with the short title at the bottom, it's just start bang on 100 words. So I suppose never has such a short document. I suppose it's a very short fuse that's going to lead to a very big political explosion.
Do you think brevity is compassionate in these circumstances?
Probably.
All right. So, not yet a full week of Donald Trump as president, and we've already had one wall, two pipelines, a massive Pacific trade deal aborted, abortions abroad no longer to be financed with federal dollars, a federal hiring freeze, the dismantling of Obamacare begun, 3 to 5 million illegal voters conjured up from nowhere. just like the record crowds he claims were on the Washington Mall for his inauguration speech. An obsession with size can clearly make you delusional. Oh yes, and just tonight, talk of a 20% tariff on Mexican exports to the United States. So how does all that compare with your week? Yeah, I thought so. You weren't quite so busy, were you? All that, and he's still got his meeting with Theresa May to look forward to. What a lucky man. But what does it all mean? Here to offer some clarity is the man who would be Trump's ambassador to the EU, Ted Malloch. This is his take of the week.
Well, she's washed and polished and full of high octane. Riding with the top down, cruising in the fast lane. Red hair's blowing bright as a flame. Cadillac red's her name. Cadillac red.
The good times are back again for two great nations. After nearly a decade of drift, a man who understands our shared history, values, and aspirations is in the driving seat across the pond. This marks a huge opportunity for both Britain and America to celebrate and renew that classic, the special relationship.
Cadillac red.
There's every reason that Theresa May and Donald Trump should have hit it off tomorrow. It's not insignificant that she's the first foreign leader to meet the president. Once they've broken the ice and established some chemistry, there's every reason to believe they can get on with discussing trade issues. There's enthusiasm in Team Trump to deal with this issue quickly, and it could aid in a swift, hard Brexit for Britain on more favorable terms with the EU.
Cadillac red. Cadillac red.
The visit will provide an opportunity to reassert the transatlantic alliance. But the world has not stood still since 1949, and NATO will have to step up and modify in order to meet the new threats. That means that member states are going to have to pay their fair share and not free ride on the American defense budget. Countries like France, Germany, and Luxembourg are simply going to have to pay more.
Hey, hey, Cadillac red. Hey, hey.
Finally, we need to start planning for a return state visit so that President Trump can meet the Queen this summer, putting the special relationship firmly back on course.
Thanks to our pals at LA Stretch Limos, based in Essex, naturally, for the loan of their beautiful 1962 Cadillac. I'll be ready for my home journey in about half an hour, chaps. Better put the roof up, though. It's very cold out there. Ted Malloch, who's currently Professor of Strategic Leadership and Governance at Henley Business School, joins me now. Welcome to the programme. Do we have any idea what Donald Trump means by the special relationship?
Well, I think he thinks it's special. Which means that he has some historical view of what has transpired before, but I think he's looking for a new chemistry between himself and Mrs. May.
Is he, in your view, genuinely pro-British, sympathetic to Britain, in a way that Mr. Obama might not have been?
Well, I think it's really a contrast between day and night. His mother was born in Stornoway on the Isle of Lewis. Her favorite person was the Queen. Donald Trump loves Great Britain.
Mrs. May spoke tonight in Philadelphia to a convention of Republican congressional politicians, and she even talked about a new special relationship, a new age of Anglo-American leadership. That's what she was said. Is it not risky to rely too much on a president who's widely regarded as a bit of a loose cannon?
Yes, I think it's a sign actually of the vulnerability that she senses about herself. I mean, she does feel, pretty isolated on the European issue, and she obviously thinks it's very important to be close to the United States. There is a risk, while she's there, she's going to be asked whether she agrees with the president on his views on trade, his views on immigration, his views on torture, and of course on none of those things does she agree. and it will be quite deft of her to voice her disagreement without, as it were, blowing the visit out of the water.
Well, sure. I mean, what she wants is to cement Anglo-American relations on defence, intelligence. She wants to open the way to a free trade deal. A lot of people here, particularly on the left and centre left, they basically want her to lecture the president about the wall, waterboarding, women's rights.
Yes, well,
should she succumb to that?
No, she'll definitely not get into the business of lecturing the president, but she will find it difficult not to answer questions on these subjects. And she won't want to antagonise the president. Neither will she particularly want the president, if he gives voice to his enthusiasm for Brexit, to go on and say that he'd welcome the demise of the European Union, because apparently,
Because she said she doesn't.
Apparently, our position is that whilst we think it's such a ridiculous organisation that we're very happy to withdraw from it, we nonetheless would like this ridiculous organisation to survive.
As she said in her Lancaster House
More or less.
speech.
I paraphrase.
And virtually said the same to Mrs. Merkel in a call afterwards that night, and to Donald Tusk. It's a tricky one for Mrs. May. It's not easy, but it's kind of hard. If you have in the Oval Office someone who's pro-British, someone who's pro-Brexit, someone who does seem enthusiastic about the special relationship, it's kind of hard for a British Prime Minister not to take advantage of that.
Of course, she had to go there. But she's been Home Secretary, and she's been Home Secretary for a long time, which means she'd have had very close relationships with the American security services. And they will be, apart from a few people at the top, the same people. And so I think in particular, the waterboarding, the torture comment they made today, that's very important, because the British and American security services work so closely together and cooperate so closely together. We couldn't do that.
No, but he said he's not going to do it either.
Well, he said he was going to take advice from his...
from the two people who are against it.
It was
Who have already said they're against it.
Mad Dog Mattis has said he doesn't want to
It's not going to happen.
touch it. I mean, in a sense, Mr. Trump today on that issue was a classic Trump. He played to his base by saying, oh, well, if it was up to me, I would do it. I think it works. And then he said, but of course, I'm going to listen to Mad Dog Mattis, Mr. Pompeo, who'll be the new director of the CIA, and they've both said not to do it.
The general has said it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, which is the best advice.
Mr. Trump said it did, on advice that we don't know where it was sourced from.
Well, we know that it has worked on a few occasions. So the question is there an occasion when you would use an extreme form of interrogation?
And you'll see if it comes. I want to stick with some wider subjects tonight. Is a free trade deal with the UK, a bilateral US-UK free trade deal, is that a priority for Mr. Trump?
I think it is. I think he's gone out of his way to say that this is something he wants to achieve. And he's willing to do it in record time. He's invited her over primarily for this reason. And it meets Britain, frankly, at its time of greatest need.
He's also pro-Brexit, which is
Yes.
a total change of any from before who's been in the Oval Office. He has no enthusiasm for EU integration.
You noticed?
Further, yep. And he's also not a big pal of the Germans or Mrs. Merkel either.
Well, he said some things about Germany that have caused concern in those circles.
So is he prepared to expend political capital to help Britain in Brexit?
I think he is. He doesn't like an organization that is supranational, that is unelected, where the bureaucrats run amok, and that is not, frankly, a proper democracy.
If we start down the road of doing a free trade deal with America, and of course we can't conclude one or sign one until the Brexit process is over, but we could do a heads of agreement, we could outline what it would be. Nobody can stop Britain from doing that. Wouldn't the EU then look churlish if it didn't say, yeah, we'll do a free trade deal too?
I suppose so. I don't think it's going to happen like that. Yes, there could be a trade deal concluded very quickly. I think Ted said 9 months somewhere. And Queen's Park Rangers could end up winning the championship and win every game 6-0 from now
How
to the
about
end
Leicester?
of the season.
Boom, boom.
Yeah, they're not Queen's Park Rangers. You don't know Queen's Park Rangers, Ted. I've supported them
I
for
don't
many
know
years.
Queen's Park Rangers either.
So these things, are they likely? We export £240 billion worth of goods to the European Union. We export around £30 billion worth of goods to America. Now, our nearest and biggest market has to be a priority for us to maintain what we've already got before we go off into some adventure.
But that's why she wants a free trade deal with the EU too.
I want a free trade deal with America, but the thought that Donald Trump is somehow going to help us by doing a free trade deal before we've gone through the process of Article 50 and then renegotiate our way back in to our biggest and nearest market is fantasy.
Does having a pro-Brexit president in the Oval Office strengthen Mrs May's negotiating hand with the EU?
Certainly up to a point it does. I mean, as you've commented, this is unknown terrain for us. We've never had a president who's understood our position in the European Union before. However, if he voices the sort of analysis that Ted has just voiced, with which I don't disagree about the European Union, there is a danger, of course, that our European partners will assume that Mrs May is really just like Donald Trump, that is to say, that she really wants to bring down the European Union, in which case that would make our negotiating position more difficult.
What do you mean by our position, Michael? Previous American presidents have understood our position, because our position was to be in the European Union.
And they always supported that. I mean,
What I meant was our position of discomfort within the European Union.
This is a watershed change, and I wondered if something happened today. Am I right in thinking that Mrs Merkel said that she would go at short notice to see Mr Trump, and he hasn't even replied yet to give her a date?
I think she's anxious to see him, and he's had a cool approach to the Germans, and he said some things both about the euro and about the way that the European Union is tilted towards Germany. So I'm sure it's raised eyebrows, if not antagonisms, in Berlin.
So maybe the Germans will want Mrs May to be something of an intermediary, an emissary.
Well, she's going to Turkey next, I think.
Who, Mrs Merkel? Or Mrs.
No,
May?
Mrs. May.
Mrs May, right. Why do you want to be US ambassador to the EU? I mean, you're clearly not a great fan of Brussels or its bureaucrats like Jean-Claude Juncker.
Well, I had in a previous career a diplomatic post where I helped to bring down the Soviet Union. So maybe there's another union that needs a little taming.
So
if I may say so, Andrew, it's only the British who believe that an ambassador from one country to another has to take on the point of view of the country to which he's sent, rather than the point of view of the country which is sending him.
It's a bit unusual to send an ambassador to bring down the country to which you have been sent to.
Well, I think we want the American ambassador to the EU to represent America, not the EU.
What do you think of Mr Juncker?
Well, Mr. Juncker was a very adequate mayor, I think, of some city in Luxembourg, and maybe he should go back and do that again.
Well, this is clearly going to be a very diplomatic appointment when you get there. Will you keep in touch with us?
Just have a chat with Nigel Farage. He's in the same diplomatic corps as you.
This is going to be more fun than Washington.
I think so.
Yeah, well, we'll look forward to it. Thank you for being with us. Next time we'll have to call you Mr. Ambassador.